They didn't want her there, not because she was a threat, not yet, but because she didn't look like one. A simple woman, no badge, no uniform, no tactical gloves or combat boots. Just presence, quiet, still. And that, in itself, was unsettling. You see, the system isn't built to recognize true power when it doesn't come dressed in authority. It's built to preserve itself, to guard the gate. To keep the ordinary exactly where it belongs, beneath the boot of the elite. But today, something slipped through, and what happened next wasn't supposed to be possible. When she asked to step onto the range, they laughed, not mockingly, just dismissively, like she'd confused the firing line for a food court. These were men with scars, muscles, tactical histories, and confirmed kills. This was a SWAT training facility, not a place for civilian entertainment. But the woman didn't flinch. She didn't beg, argue, or explain. She simply watched, studied, waited. That's where it all begins, with observation, while others rush to prove the powerful sit in silence. Because true mastery is never loud. It's not flexed on social media or hidden behind ranks. It is patient, it is precise, and when it moves with the force of inevitability. So they gave her one chance, one shot. More to shut her up than anything else. Just one round. Warm-up, no second try, just a single opportunity to prove them wrong. Or prove herself foolish. They handed her the weapon like a joke, but the joke never landed. She stepped into position like she had stood there 1,000 times before. And when her finger curled around the trigger, time paused, not for her, but for everyone watching. It was a statement, the kind that shatters glass, bends perception, and exposes the uncomfortable truth that maybe, just maybe, system doesn't know what it's doing. And in that moment, with a single bullet, she didn't just outshoot them, she dismantled the illusion of superiority. This isn't a story about a gun range, it's a story about the world we live in. Asterisk, what if I told you this wasn't about skill? That it wasn't about how steady her hand was or how clean her stance looked? What if the real secret wasn't in the trigger pull, but in everything that came before it? You see, the world we live in doesn't reward preparation done in silence. It celebrates noise. It's obsessed with flash titles, medals, ranks, awards, but those things are just costumes, disguises to make the powerful look untouchable. They distract you from the truth that real danger doesn't make noise. Real power moves in shadows. She didn't show up to impress. She showed up ready, and that terrified them, because they didn't see her coming. They'd spent so long training to identify threats that looked like them, aggressive, loud, armored, that they forgot the most dangerous person in the room is the one who never had to raise her voice. Let me explain something to you about systems, any system, whether it's law enforcement, the military, academia, or even your job. Systems don't know how to handle outliers. They're built to process the predictable, the formula followers, the rule takers, the ones who climb the ladder, not the ones who walk around it. But this woman didn't need a ladder. She didn't need permission. She needed one shot hand. She turned it into a reckoning. That's what shook them. Not the bullseye, not the perfect grouping, but the realization that she was something outside of their training. And that meant they couldn't control her. That she didn't owe her skill to their process. And when someone succeeds without the blessing of the system feels threatened. Think about how that applies to your own life. How many times have you been told to wait your turn, to pay your dues, to prove your worth their way? And how many of those rules were designed to keep people like you from realizing you never needed the system in the first place? That's what her shot exposed. That talent doesn't ask for validation, that precision doesn't require applause, and that the most powerful people in the world are often the ones you overlook until it's too late. Now let me tell you where she learned to shoot like that. Asterisk, she didn't grow up on a range. She wasn't handed a rifle at age 6 by some ex-Marine father. There were no military academies, no secret government contracts, no bloodline of snipers in her family tree. She learned in silence, in isolation. A borrowed .22 in the backwoods of nowhere. Her mentors were time trial and the cold indifference of the wild dot out there. There's no scoreboard, no applause, just breath, distance, wind, and consequence. You don't learn to shoot to show off. You learn because if you miss, you don't eat. If you flinch, you fail. The wild doesn't care about your resume. It sharpens you or it buries you. That's where she became dangerous, not because she could hit a bullseye, but because she could do it with no audience, no praise, no competition. Because she understood something, every elite shooter eventually learns the most lethal part of a weapon isn't the round or the barrel. It's the calm in the mind before the trigger breaks. And that calm, you can't teach it in a classroom. You can't fake it with gear. That calm is born in hard moments. Moments when no one is watching, when quitting feels easier, when failure seems guaranteed. But you keep going anyway. She'd spent years in those moments, alone, grinding, getting sharper while the world was asleep. And what she brought to the line that day wasn't just skill, it was stillness. The kind that terrifies men who rely on chaos. The SWAT officers. They had drills, regimens, strict formations. They were machines programmed by a manual. But she wasn't a machine. She was instinct, purpose, and unshakable focus. They brought protocols. She brought presence. That's why when she stepped up, they laughed, because they hadn't seen what the wilderness had turned her into. They only saw the surface, a simple woman with no badge, no uniform, no title. And in that moment, they exposed themselves, not just their arrogance, but their blindness, because they forgot the oldest truth in any battlefield, any arena, any life or death moment. The quiet ones are the ones you should fear most. The air that day was thick not with weather, but with judgment. You could feel it, like static, crawling across the skin. The SWAT team stood in formation, bulletproof vests, tactical goggles, their weapons gleaming like ornaments of ego. They weren't just guarding the line, they were guarding their pride. She stood alone, no backup, no team, just her, a borrowed rifle, and the silence of someone who's already made peace with being underestimated. One of the instructors smirked. You know, the Type X military crew cut, chin up, voice like gravel. He nodded to her like a favor, not an invitation. The kind of gesture that says, let's get this over with. He didn't realize she wasn't there to be tolerated. Was there to change the temperature of the room. The target was set at 100 yards, standard for a qualification round. Most officers train for months to get that shot consistent. A tight group under pressure isn't just skill, it's psychology, the breathing, the stance, the pulse. Everything has to sync. She didn't say a word, just breathed once, deep, controlled. And then the stillness returned. That eerie kind of stillness that makes you question if time just slowed down, then dash boom, one shot, silence, at first. No one reacted. The crack echoed and died, and all you could hear was wind moving through the trees. Then someone walked up to the target. They didn't speak, just stared, dead center, not close, not near, not grouped, dead center, and something shifted. You felt it in the posture of the men, not fear, not yet. But that first tremor of doubt, that internal whisper, what if we were wrong about her? She stepped back, didn't gloat, didn't grin, just handed the rifle back like it was never about proving anything, and that's when it hit them. She didn't come here to compete, she came to remind them that greatness doesn't ask for permission. It doesn't arrive with fanfare. Sometimes it walks in quietly, humbly, wearing the wrong clothes, standing in the wrong place. But when it speaks, when it acts, everything else goes silent, because truth doesn't shout, it hits the mark and lets the world catch up. The news spread like wildfire, but only in whispers. No headlines, no press releases, just murmurs in locker rooms and late-night conversations. Did you hear about the woman? Yeah, one shot, dead center. The story traveled fast, but always with disbelief wrapped around it, because the system doesn't like anomalies. It likes predictability, rank, protocol, and she was none of those things. The instructors tried to explain it away. Luck, a fluke. Maybe the sights were off and aligned just right by accident. They tried to drown the moment in excuses, hoping to reclaim their shaken ground. But it wasn't just the shot that bothered them, it was her eyes, because when she pulled the trigger, it wasn't nerves or surprise in her expression. It was calm, absolute certainty. Like she'd already done it 1,000 times before, like she didn't just AMC knew. And that knowing, that terrified them. You see, we live in a world obsessed with credentials, badges, certifications, uniforms. We assign power based on titles and then act surprised when true power doesn't show up wearing one. They couldn't accept her because she didn't fit their algorithm. She wasn't military, she wasn't law enforcement, she didn't belong. But that's the trap, isn't it? The belief that greatness needs your permission to exist. She was a reminder that talent doesn't need a pedigree. That skill can be forged in silence, behind closed doors, in lives you've never thought twice about. She wasn't just a woman with a rifle. She was every underestimated soul. Every outsider who's ever been told, you're not good enough. Every quiet genius passed over for being too simple, too humble, too unfamiliar. And for the first time in a long time, the SWAT team stood face to face with a truth they couldn't command or outtrain. That maybe, just maybe, the world's deadliest aim isn't sitting in your barracks or your boot camp. It's living in the house next door, sharpening itself in silence, not asking to be seen, just waiting for the day someone says, "You don't belong here." Because that's when it steps forward, not to prove a point but to rewrite the whole damn system, asterisk. There's a reason stories like hers are buried. They don't fit the narrative. Because if you nearly knew how often ordinary people eclipse so-called professionals, the entire power structure would crack. You'd stop worshiping uniforms. You'd question the gatekeepers, and the illusion would fall apart. She was never supposed to win. That's what made it dangerous. The footage from the range, gone quietly erased from archives. Witnesses told not to speak. An official silence wrapped around the incident like a body bag. But words still leaked out, not because someone talked, but because truth has a way of clawing through concrete. And behind every whisper was the same question: who the hell was she? That question became a virus. It spread through forums, back channels, even into government training circles. Not officially, no, you'd never find her name on a list. But every sniper, every spec ops operator who heard about her, they felt the tremor, because deep down, they knew there's always someone better. Somewhere, hidden, and sometimes she doesn't even know it herself until you give her a target. That's the part they missed. They thought denying her was rejection, but it was actually ignition. The moment they told her she wasn't qualified, she stopped holding back. She didn't walk into that range to prove anything. She walked in already knowing. She didn't shoot to impress. She shot because it was the truth. That rifle wasn't a weapon in her hands. It was a signature. One round, no hesitation. No follow dash up, the kind of shot that rewrites everyone's belief in what's possible. They tried to chalk it up to beginner's luck. But luck doesn't breathe. Like that, luck doesn't calculate wind drift, bullet drop, sight picture, and heartbeat in a single breath. That was mastery. Mastery born in silence. Mastery that didn't need permission. And if you're watching this thinking, that's impossible, that couldn't really happen, ask yourself why you're so quick to doubt it. Is it because reality is truly unbelievable? Or is it because you've been conditioned to believe greatness only comes in uniform, with medals and ranks? She broke that illusion with one trigger pull. She wasn't there to ask for acceptance. She was there to remind them. Sometimes the people they ignore the most are the ones the system should fear the most. Asterisk, they didn't speak her name after that day. Not in official briefings. Not in internal emails. It was as if she'd never existed. But you don't bury impact. You can erase a name from paper, but you can't unburn a memory. And that shot was seared into every witness, every ego. She shattered that day. That one round didn't just hit a target, it detonated years of illusion. Behind the scenes, things shifted. Quietly, SWAT training modules were revised. Ballistics parameters were reassessed. Instructors started telling a theoretical tale of an unknown civilian outperforming elite marksmen. They never admitted it was real, but the trainees felt the gravity of it. And in every hushed retelling, her legend grew. She sought glory. She didn't give interviews, didn't monetize her moment. That's what made her dangerous. She wasn't chasing attention. She was chasing truth. And in doing so, she exposed something no one wanted to confront. Maybe skill isn't what we've been told it is. Maybe greatness doesn't need credentials. Maybe the system isn't designed to recognize excellence. It's designed to filter it out unless it conforms. What if the reason she was denied wasn't her skill level, but her silence, her refusal to play the game? No resume padded with military jargon. No background the brass could point to and claim. Just a quiet woman who had trained in the dark, sharpening every breath, every shot, until her very presence became a threat to the status quo. And if you think this is just about shooting, you've missed the point. This is about every system that says, not you. Every gatekeeper that tells someone they're not qualified, not good enough, not ready. This is about what happens when someone stops waiting for permission and shows up. Ready to prove them wrong, she didn't walk away with a medal. She walked away with something more powerful, proof, that expertise doesn't wear a uniform. That talent isn't always loud, and that sometimes the most dangerous person in the room is the one nobody saw coming. Because that day, they all learned something they'll never admit out loud. There's nothing more terrifying to a system built on control than someone who doesn't need it. Asterisk, you need to understand something. This wasn't just a fluke. This wasn't luck. What happened that day was the result of thousands of quiet, unseen hours. The kind of hours that don't show up on resumes or LinkedIn profiles. The kind of hours nobody applauds you for. The kind of hours that break most people long before they ever master anything. She had trained for this, not for fame, not for validation, but because something inside her refused to settle for the world as it is. She didn't grow up with access. She wasn't born into the right circles. Nobody handed her a badge or a weapon and said, "Go be great." She found greatness in the silence. In the moments most people skip, in the repetition that drives the undisciplined insane. Bragged about tactics, she obsessed over mechanics. While others posed for photos in tactical gear, she drilled until the gun felt like an extension of her nervous system. She didn't just shoot. She became the shot. That kind of focus can't be taught. It has to be built, and that's why they were afraid. Because if someone like her could show up, uninvited, unapproved, and outperform them at their own game. What did that say about their game? What did that say about the training budgets, the promotions, the hierarchy? Her existence was a glitch in the matrix, but she didn't care about their discomfort. She wasn't trying to make a point. She wasn't trying to disrupt anything. She was just trying to become something she could live with. That's the part nobody talks about sometimes. You don't train to prove anything to the world. You train to prove something to yourself, to know, without doubt, that when the moment comes, you won't blink, you won't flinch, you won't fail. That's what separated her, not her gender, not her background, but the quiet war she fought long before that. Trigger was pulled, and if you're listening right now, maybe you feel it too, that same war inside, that same itch to be more of if no one's watching, especially if no one's watching. The question is, what are you doing about it? Now, I need you to hear this, not just with your ears, but with every part of you that still believes you're meant for more. The woman in this story, she didn't walk into that range to prove something. She wasn't trying to go viral or win approval or trend on social media. She was there because she had to be, because something inside her refused to stay quiet. A voice that whispered, "Train harder, go again, be undeniable." You think this is about a bullet? About a SWAT team? It's not. It's about you. About the fire you've been smothering with doubt. The skills you've convinced yourself aren't valuable because no one's given you a trophy for them. The voice in your head that says, "I'm not ready, I'm not qualified, I'm not enough." Let me tell you the truth, they'll never print in textbooks or teach in classrooms. Greatness doesn't ask for credentials, it doesn't wait for permission. Forged in silence, in repetition, in choosing to show up when no one's watching. That woman, she wasn't some chosen one. She was a mirror, a reflection of what any of us could become if we stopped chasing approval and started chasing mastery. If we decided we'd rather be dangerous than liked, if we realized that the only gatekeeper left is ourselves. They want you distracted, entertained, addicted to scrolling, comparing, consuming, because a focused mind, a trained hand, a person who knows what they're capable of. That's dangerous. That's what they fear, and that's what this woman represents. Not just a moment, not just a shot, a movement, a reminder that you are more than your job title, more than your past, more than the stories you've been told about your limitations. So let me ask you, what's your range? Not the place, the principle. How far are you willing to go to unlock the version of yourself the world told you didn't exist? You don't need their approval. You don't need their invitation. You just need the courage to step up and take your shot. And when you do, they won't see it coming because legends aren't born. They're built one round at a time.